In the history of Game of Thrones, the 3 Histories presents, there have been a lot of battles that have changed the course of the future for Westeros. But today, we are going to go over one battle that quite literally reshaped the future of Westeros forever. And without it, things would be very different for the Seven Kingdoms. This is the story of how the single battle at the Trident changed Westeros forever. Before we start, a quick reminder. This video will contain spoilers for both the books and the show. If you haven't finished the series, or if you haven't read the books but you intend to, then do so before continuing to watch this video. If you don't care about getting spoiled, then sit back, relax, and enjoy. There's no question that the most important battle in Game of Thrones was the Battle of the Bastards. Without it, Jon Snow wouldn't be the hero he is, Sansa Stark wouldn't be the lady she is, and the North wouldn't be the independent region it is. It is an incredible battle that had far-reaching consequences for everyone involved. However, there is another battle that actually had far more impact on the world at large than the Battle of the Bastards did. And it all happened with only 2 characters involved. This is the story of Robert's Rebellion, the war that brought the Starks, Lannisters, Baratheons, and Targs all into conflict and reshaped Westeros forever. It was a brutal and violent conflict, but what caused it? In order to understand why this war started, you have to understand the relationship between House Targaryen and House Lannister. Aerys II Targaryen was the king of the Seven Kingdoms when the story began. He ruled alongside his hand, Tywin Lannister, until Tywin resigned from his position and returned to Casterly Rock. When Tywin left King's Landing, he was replaced by the young and ambitious Jon Arryn, who was the hand of the king during the events of Robert's Rebellion. Jon Arryn was disliked by Aerys, as he often found him incompetent and reminded him of his own son, Maegor. This caused tension between the king and the hand, which grew worse when Jon Arryn punished Tywin Lannister's son Tyrion for killing his brother Merrion. After being humiliated in public by Jon Arryn, Tywin Lannister seethed for revenge. Soon after, Jon Arryn took a trip to the Riverlands in order to put down a rebellion against the crown, and while he was gone, Aerys had him poisoned. With the hand out of the picture, Aerys now had complete control of the kingdom, and he wasted no time in showing just how mad he had become. In response to the assassination of the hand, Tywin sent his daughter Cersei to seduce and marry the Prince of Dorne, Doran Martell, hoping to form a powerful alliance with the Southern Kingdom. However, Aerys wasn't interested in forming alliances, and instead ordered his queen, Rhaegar, to spy on Cersei and uncover her plans. As Aerys became increasingly paranoid, he began to turn on the people he once trusted. He executed his queen's brother, Sir Barristan Selmy, and had his best friend and master of laws, Lord Hewson, thrown into the dungeons of the Red Keep. Meanwhile, Brandon Stark had been summoned to King's Landing to wed Princess Aelia Martell and unite the Northern and Dorne kingdoms against the Targaryens. However, when Brandon and his brother Benjen arrived, they found that Aelia had been murdered, and Brandon was thrown into a rage. He attacked Aerys, but was promptly arrested. As punishment, Brandon was locked up in the Red Keep, and his father, Rickard, was summoned to King's Landing to come see his son's mangled corpse. Brandon's friends, the Mad King's brother, Prince Aemon, and Lord Hewson, managed to convince the Mad King to forgive Brandon, but it was too late. Brandon was dead. Now outraged, Rickard Stark rode south to King's Landing with his sons, Eddard and Benjen, and demanded justice for his son. However, when he arrived, he learned that Aerys had taken yet another life and had Lord Hewson put to death for conspiring against him. Outraged, Rickard immediately called for a trial by combat, but Aerys refused and instead threw Rickard into the dungeons with his son. With Brandon and Rickard dead, Eddard Stark needed to find a way to get himself out of King's Landing and return home to Winterfell. As luck would have it, he found a friend in Jon Arryn's widow, Lysa, who was still mourning the loss of her husband. Together, they escaped the city and made their way to River Run in the Riverlands. where Eddard pledged fealty to House Arryn in exchange for their support. Meanwhile, word of the atrocities committed by the Mad King reached Prince Baelor, who raised an army and marched on King's Landing to depose his brother. However, upon hearing that his father was imprisoned in the Red Keep, Baelor broke off his campaign and rode back north to confront the Mad King. Despite having twice as many men, Baelor was defeated by Aerys and forced to flee to the safety of Storm's End. Having dealt with his own brother, Aerys turned his attention back to the Starks and sent troops under the command of his son, Prince Rhaegar, to crush the rebellion. However, the young prince was defeated by the combined forces of the Starks and the Tullys at the Battle of the Green Fork. Horrified by his son's defeat, Aerys unleashed the full force of the Targaryen military might and sent a massive fleet to utterly destroy those responsible. The resulting battle would become known as the Ruby Ford. At the head of the invading force were two dragons, Vhagar and Meraxes, who flew ahead of the fleet and unleashed hell upon the assembled armies. They roasted men alive, tossed entire battalions into the river, and burned ships to the waterline. It seemed like nothing could stop the Targaryens, but then something incredible happened. From out of nowhere, a giant emerged from the river and smashed into Vhagar, knocking the dragon out of the sky. Then a young warrior named Arthur Dayne stepped forward and slew Meraxes with his legendary sword, Dawn. With their dragons slain, the Targaryens were no longer invincible and the Riverlands fleet was able to regroup. Although they lost many good men, the Rivermen were ultimately victorious and drove the invaders back across the Ruby Ford. But this victory came at a great cost. Many great warriors died, including the legendary Sword of the Morning, and the Riverlands would never be the same again. Following the battle, Aerys went mad and waged a brutal campaign across the Seven Kingdoms, burning villages and slaughtering anyone who opposed him. Eventually, his forces made their way to the Trident, where they met up with an army led by Prince Rhaegar and his uncle, Sir Barristan Selmy. At the head of the rebel forces were Eddard Stark, Jon Arryn, and Robert Baratheon. On the first day of the battle, Robert Baratheon was nearly killed when his horse was slain beneath him. Fortunately, he was rescued by a warrior named Ethan of the Hills. The next day, however, Robert got his revenge when he slew the knight who had captured him the day before, along with Sir Barristan Selmy. With their champion slain, the Targaryens fled across the river. As soon as Aerys realized he was losing the battle, he ordered his youngest son, Aegon, to be brought before him. Then, mounted on the back of the last remaining dragon, Balerion, the Mad King gave his son a crown and proclaimed him the new king. Aegon and Balerion fled south to Dorne, where they hoped to raise an army and take back the Iron Throne. Unfortunately for them, both Aegon and Balerion would die soon after, leaving the Targaryens without an heir. Now that the battle was lost, Aerys surrendered himself to Eddard Stark, but was promptly beheaded by order of Robert Baratheon. After the battle, Robert Baratheon married Cersei Lannister and took the Iron Throne, while Eddard Stark was appointed Hand of the King. This victory would change the course of Westeros forever. The Starks gained immense power and influence. The Lannisters became the richest family in the Seven Kingdoms, and the Targaryens were reduced to a minor royal house. And without it, things would be very different for everyone involved. The war itself was fought over the course of 3 days. On the first day, the Targaryens used their dragons to devastating effect, killing hundreds of men and burning ships, but they lost both of their dragons by the end of the second day. On the third day, the battle was more even, but the Targaryens were already demoralized by the loss of their dragons and were eventually defeated. The final duel at the Trident was between Robert Baratheon and Prince Rhaegar. The two were evenly matched at first, but Robert eventually got the upper hand and killed Rhaegar. This was a significant moment in the battle, because Rhaegar was the last surviving Targaryen prince, and his death effectively ended the Targaryen claim to the throne. So there you have it, the battle that changed everything. Now you know why Robert Baratheon became king, how the Starks and Lannisters rose to prominence, and why the Targaryens were reduced to a minor royal house. Do you think the outcome of the battle could have been any different? Do you think the Starks made a mistake by allying with the Lannisters? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this 3 Histories channel video, make sure to leave a like and check out my other videos on the channel. Thank you for watching, and until next time, winter is coming.